Welcome to my channel. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe and like. Lieutenant Mara Vex stood barefoot on the cold metal floor of the ship's bay, her toes trembling against the bone-chilling steel. Her hands were bound tight with energy cords, glowing blue loops that hissed with every jerk, slicing into her flesh like plasma blades. Her eyes locked onto the pitch-black void beyond the escape hatch, an endless, frigid expanse where no star dared to shine, the Kaelar Black Hole, a graveyard for every pilot, a place where light was strangled and time unraveled. Her torn flight suit hung in tatters at her shoulder and chest, dried blood crusting her left cheek, dripping in slow, deliberate drops to mingle with the oil stains and scorched metal below. Her breath came heavy, fogging briefly in the stifling air before vanishing into nothing. Behind her, Colonel Zorn's rasping laugh cut through the silence, sharp and cold as a blade scraping steel. "You should thank me, Vex," he said, his voice low and mocking, each word a deliberate slash. "Dumping you here is kinder than blasting your skull for treason." He loomed tall in the sleek black armor of the Alliance, his pale gray eyes glinting with cruelty. Mara clenched her teeth, her jaw aching with the effort. Treason? No. She hadn't rebelled. She'd refused to fire on civilians, refused to press the button that would rain fire on Alara, a colony of thousands, homes, fields, all to send Zorn's bloody message to anyone daring to defy the Alliance. For that, she'd been seized on her own ship, beaten by those who once called her comrade, dragged here like a chained beast. The Alliance fleet had turned its back on her. Her name was erased from the pilot roster, her records burned to digital ash, leaving her a ghost no one would remember. Zorn stepped closer, his heavy boots thudding against the deck, each stomp reverberating in her chest. He stopped a few meters away, his breath reeking of tobacco and burned metal. "You were a good pilot, Vex," he said, his tone slow, savoring every syllable. "Shame you couldn't keep your mouth shut." Mara lifted her head, black hair matted with blood sticking to her forehead, her gaze a sharpened blade piercing through his smug armor. "I'll remember your face, Zorn," she growled, each word forced through gritted teeth like a vow. He laughed louder, the sound drowning out the ship's humming engines, echoing in the metal chamber like a predator's roar. "No, you won't," he shot back, pointing at the hatch. "You'll dissolve into the void." Mara turned her face to the darkness outside. The Kaelar Black Hole loomed like a tear in space, its edges bending light into twisted, distorted swirls. She'd flown through dozens of battlefields, dodged plasma rounds and dogfights, but never had death felt so close. The ship's engines roared, the floor trembling beneath her, as if it too feared the invisible monster beyond. An officer stood by the control panel, his hand shaking over the release button. "Do it," Zorn ordered, his voice a cold snap. The officer hesitated, his eyes flicking to Mara, but then he pressed down. The hatch screamed open with a piercing screech. Cosmic wind howled, sucking air out in a ravenous gust, dragging dust and debris with it. Mara stood firm, though the pressure deafened her ears. Zorn stepped forward, his hand clamping onto her shoulder, nails digging into her skin through the shredded fabric. "Think you're a hero, Vex?" he whispered, his hot breath brushing her ear. "You're just trash." She turned her head, locking eyes with him, unflinching. "You'll pay," she said, her voice low but steady as steel. He smirked, then shoved hard. Mara fell. Her body tumbled into the dark, weightless, silent except for the thundering of her heart, pounding like war drums. The void swallowed her, frigid and relentless, tearing breath from her lungs. She plummeted toward the Kaelar Black Hole, where light died and time ceased. But then, in that final moment, something small glinted as it slipped from her suit's pocket. Her father's old insignia keepsake from a pilot lost in this very region, a man she'd barely known since childhood hovered before her, its silver surface catching the faint light from the receding ship. Her father's image flashed in her mind, stern eyes, a rare smile as he taught her to fly a simulator at 5 years old. The insignia spun, a last reminder of family, of what she'd lost, before the dark claimed it. Mara clenched her fists, those still bound. She didn't scream, didn't beg. If this was death, she'd face it with everything she had. Yet death didn't come. She fell faster, deeper into the nothingness. Pressure crushed her chest, the cold gnawing at her skin through her torn suit. Zorn's ship shrank to a distant speck above, its lights fading like a predator's eyes after discarding its prey. The cosmic wind's roar drowned all else, but in her mind, Zorn's voice lingered. Dissolve into the void. No, she thought, teeth grinding until blood seeped from her lip. She wouldn't vanish. Not that easily. She plunged through a cloud of stardust, tiny motes flaring like fireflies before the black hole devoured them. Her mind spun not from fear, but from the rage blazing in her chest. Zorn, the Alliance, all of them, they saw her as a pawn, a foolish pilot daring to defy orders. But she wasn't foolish. She knew Alara posed no threat. She'd seen the maps, the classified reports, no weapons, no army, just people trying to live. And Zorn had ordered them burned to prove his power. Mara closed her eyes not to surrender, but to focus. Her breathing slowed, though the air thinned. She felt the black hole's pull, an invisible force dragging her deeper. Then, a small crack sounded in her ears, the energy cords around her wrists fractured, their blue glow flickering before dying out, unable to withstand the void's pressure. Her hands were free. She opened her eyes, staring into the infinite dark below. The Kaelar Black Hole gaped wide, waiting, but a fire ignited within her. She wouldn't die here. Not today. The darkness engulfed her. Her head grew heavy, her body numb. She blacked out, thinking it was the end. But deep in her mind, the insignia lingered, a promise unfulfilled. Mara awoke, pain exploding through her like a plasma blast in her chest. Her bones groaned, every joint creaking as if ready to snap. Her head spun, a whirlwind of darkness, and the void's lingering shriek echoing in her ears. She lay flat, her back pressed against a frigid metal surface, not the polished deck of an Alliance ship, but something ancient, rusted, dusted with faintly glimmering stardust. The air was thin, suffocating, thick with the scent of scorched metal, old oil, and something else, a decay that stretched across centuries. She inhaled, her lungs stinging, but forced her eyes open. Before her stretched an unbelievable sight. Hundreds of colossal spacecraft drifted in the dark, ghostly shapes warped and twisted, like corpses floating in an endless sea. Faint lights flickered from their hulls, dying eyes blinking in their final agony. This was a ship graveyard, trapped in the warped fringes of the Kaelar Black Hole, where time and space bent into bizarre spirals. They bore no Alliance markings, nothing like the fleets she'd fought with in countless battles. Their hulls were rugged, pocked with dents and rust, some scarred by long-dead energy cannons. Relics of a lost civilization, swallowed by the void and forgotten. Mara pushed herself up, her trembling breath fogging briefly before dissipating in the icy air. Her flight suit hung in shreds at her chest and legs, caked with stardust, the dried blood from her cheek now streaking her neck. She was alive. That stunned her. The energy cords were gone, leaving only faint burns on her wrists, likely torn apart by the black hole's strange pull as she fell. She had no weapons, no food, nothing but her bare hands and the rage burning in her chest, a smoldering fire that kept her sharp amid the jaws of death. She scanned her surroundings, orienting herself. The ships hung motionless, but the silence wasn't total. A faint hiss drifted from the distance, like wind through metal, then faded. Then came another sound. A sharp, metallic scrape, like claws raking steel, reverberating from the shadows behind her. Mara spun around, her heart slamming against her ribs. In the thick darkness, a pair of glowing green eyes stared back, unblinking, unwavering, hovering high above the deck like twin spectral flames. She held her breath, fists clenching though she had nothing to grip. The creature emerged slowly, stepping from the gloom. It was massive, at least thrice her height, its body encased in jagged black armor like obsidian, its long limbs ending in sickle-sharp claws that split the dim light as it moved. A being of the void, something that shouldn't exist, couldn't exist, in the logic she'd known. Mara stood her ground, feet planted on the cold metal. Running meant death. She knew it, deep in the instincts of a pilot who'd faced enemy fleets and energy storms. "What do you want?" she shouted, her voice ringing through the dead space, drowning the void's hiss. The creature didn't growl, didn't lunge. It tilted its head, green eyes flaring as if sizing her up, a predator weighing its prey. Then it advanced, slow and deliberate, each step shaking the deck, metal clanging like a death knell. Mara didn't retreat, though her heart threatened to burst, though her steady breaths masked the fear roaring within. She met its gaze, her eyes steel-hard, revealing no weakness. A flash from the black hole pierced the dark, illuminating the creature for a fleeting moment. Its armor wasn't natural, it was forged, melded to its body like a living machine, sharp seams glinting under the warped light. Its head was elongated, spiked along the sides, and from its maw dripped a black, viscous fluid, smoking as it hit the floor. This wasn't a wild beast. It was something intelligent, abandoned in the void like her, a survivor amid the ruins of the past. Mara swallowed hard, sweat trickling down her forehead, pattering onto the deck. It didn't attack, just stood there, meters away, its green eyes boring into her as if peering through her soul. She scanned around, seeking anything to wield. A jagged metal shard lay nearby, its edge catching the faint light. She bent slowly, fingers brushing it, never breaking eye contact with the creature. It didn't move, only tilted its head further, curious. Mara gripped the shard, the cold biting into her palm. "If you want to kill me," she said, voice low but firm, "then try it." The space fell silent, save for the void's hum and her own breathing pounding in her ears. Then she saw it. Her father's insignia, resting quietly on the deck a few steps away, its silver surface faintly gleaming amid the dust and rust. Her heart clenched. It couldn't be here. She'd watched it fall as she was cast into the void, swallowed by the dark. Yet there it lay, as if it had guided her to this very place, an invisible thread pulling her from death's grasp. Mara stepped forward, slow and deliberate, eyes still on the creature. It didn't stop her, just watched, its green gaze tracking her every move. She knelt, trembling fingers lifting the insignia. The metal was ice cold, but familiar memories of her father, his tales of uncharted space whispered to her as a child. She clutched the insignia, turning to face the creature. It remained still, but a low rumble escaped its throat, not a growl, but something deeper, a whisper from the void. Mara stood tall, the shard in her other hand gripped so tight it hurt. She didn't know what it was, didn't know what it wanted, but she felt it. This wasn't just a monster. It had purpose. And maybe, so did she. The void's hiss grew louder, an unseen wind sweeping through the graveyard, clinking small debris against each other. Mara inhaled deeply, her lungs aching in the thin air. She was alive, and that meant she had a chance. This creature, its unblinking green eyes fixed on her, seemed to know it too. It took another step, the deck shuddering, but didn't strike. Mara tightened her grip on the insignia, the metal biting her skin. "Fine," she whispered, voice hoarse. "Let's see who you are." The creature halted mere steps from Mara, its towering bulk filling the cramped space between twisted metal wrecks. It lowered its head not to strike, but as an invitation, its glowing green eyes dropping to her level. Mara frowned, sweat streaking her forehead, dripping to patter against the dust and rust below. Her hand trembled not from fear, but from the icy chill seeping through her palm, and a strange sensation rising within her as if she stood at a crossroads of fate. She stepped forward, each move slow, the deck creaking under her weight. Her hand reached out, brushing the creature's frigid armor, hard as steel yet oddly warm at the seams. A jolt surged through her mind, not pain, but a flood of alien thoughts, chaotic and fierce. Images flashed, abandoned ships shattering in space, fiery battles with energy cannons tearing through the dark, a mighty army dominating the galaxy before the black hole devoured them. She saw blurred faces, screams choked by the void, then darkness, a cold betrayal by their own allies. Mara yanked her hand back, breath ragged, fogging white in the thin air. Her head spun, but she understood. This creature wasn't her enemy. It was the last survivor of this fleet, trapped for centuries in the graveyard, waiting for someone worthy to carry its legacy. "You want me to lead?" she whispered, voice hoarse, nearly lost to the void's distant hum. The creature rumbled, a deep sound that shook the space, the deck quivering beneath her as if awakening. That was its answer. Mara straightened, clutching her father's insignia, the metal digging into her skin until it ached. Then it turned, claws clacking against the floor, striding toward a massive nearby ship, its rusted hull still radiating the majesty of an ancient war machine. It paused, glancing back, green eyes flaring like a signal to follow. Mara hesitated, fingers tightening on the insignia. The rage within her rage at Zorn, at the Alliance, at the system that cast her into the void flared, propelling her forward, past jagged metal shards and the husks of decayed ships. A colossal door loomed ahead, twice her height, coated in stardust and blackened scorch marks from forgotten battles. It groaned as the creature shoved it open, claws scraping sparks across the steel. Mara stepped inside, the darkness thickening, swallowing the faint light from the graveyard outside. The air grew heavy, suffocating, thick with old oil and burnt metal, laced with the scent of life long extinguished. A feeble engine hum whined from deep within, like the last breaths of a dying beast, each pulse a forgotten plea. The creature led her through narrow corridors, walls draped in severed cables and loose panels that clattered when she brushed them. They stopped in a vast central chamber, its high ceiling studded with broken pillars. An ancient screen flickered at the center, casting a pale blue glow over the creature's rusted face. It touched the screen with a claw, slow and almost reverent. A voice crackled to life, not human, but a metallic clatter, fragmented like steel striking machinery. Mara couldn't decipher it, but images flooded her mind again, an army betrayed, gleaming ships dragged into the black hole by their own allies, desperate roars swallowed by the dark. This creature wasn't just a being, it was the final commander of a forgotten fleet, bearing the memories of a civilization reduced to ash. Mara met its gaze, her eyes unyielding, locked on those blazing green orbs. "You want me to wake them?" she asked, voice steady as steel, though her heart hammered. The creature nodded, deliberate, claws tapping the floor in confirmation. Mara gripped the insignia, its chill a reminder of her father, of what she'd lost, and what she could reclaim. But then the deck shuddered, harder, nearly throwing her off balance. A new roar echoed not from the creature before her, but from the shadowed corridor behind. Metal clashed, claws scraped steel, closer, faster. Mara stepped back, clutching the insignia, but she wasn't quick enough. A smaller creature burst from the gloom, swift as lightning, its gleaming claws flashing under the screen's dim light. It was leaner than the giant, agile, with thinner armor and blood-red eyes glowing like molten hate. The larger creature roared, lunging to intercept it just before it reached Mara. They clashed, metal screeching through the chamber, claws tearing air, black blood splattering to sizzle on the floor. Mara scanned for a weapon. A sharp metal rod lay nearby, snapped from a fallen pillar. She snatched it, hands trembling but firm, and charged in. The rod plunged deep into the smaller foe's back, piercing its thin armor, black blood erupting like burning oil, smoking as it hit the deck. It crumpled, twitching briefly before going still. The giant turned, standing tall, claws dripping black ichor, green eyes studying her as if testing her again. Mara panted, still gripping the rod, black blood searing her suit, scalding her skin. Silence fell, broken only by the void's hum and her ragged breaths. Then a whisper drifted not from the creature, but from the ship itself. A distant, familiar voice echoed through the metal walls, calling her name. "Mara!" She spun, heart pounding. The whisper was faint, unclear, but it chilled her to the core. This ship wasn't just a dead machine. It lived, or some part of it did, and it knew her. The creature stood motionless, green eyes unwavering, awaiting her response. Mara tightened her grip on the rod, her gaze ice cold. "If this is a trial," she said, voice low but resolute, "then I'll pass it." The creature rumbled, a deep sound of agreement, and the space quaked once more. But the trial wasn't over. From the depths of the dark, metal screamed again, closer, urgent, like a pack of starving beasts roused from slumber. Mara turned, pulse racing, spotting dozens of red eyes flaring amid the wreckage, gaunt shapes slithering from rusted hulks. The giant Korrath, as she'd soon name it, roared, claws digging into the floor, ready to charge. Mara clutched the rod, black blood still hot on her hands, her eyes razor sharp. More of you? She whispered, voice hoarse. Fine. Bring it on. Mara gasped for air, her chest heaving, hands still clutching the metal rod slick with black blood, searing her skin like molten oil. The ichor stained her suit, smoking as it met the thin air of the ship. Before her stood the towering creature, unscathed despite shredding the smaller foe in mere heartbeats. Its obsidian armor gleamed under the faint glow of the ancient screen, unmarred, as if forged from something unbreakable. It rumbled, softer this time, a deep resonance echoing through the central chamber, a sound of recognition, of approval for her. Mara tossed the rod aside, its clang piercing the stillness. She wiped the blood from her face with the back of her hand, smearing a black streak across her cheek, her gaze never leaving the being before her. All right, she said, voice hoarse but steady. If I'm doing this, I need to call you something. She stared into its blazing green eyes, deep as twin flames in the dark. A name surfaced in her mind, not one she conjured, but one etched there, bold and clear. Korrath, she whispered, the word rolling off her tongue like a vow. It tilted its head, slow and deliberate, eyes flaring with a spark, as if accepting the name, as if it had waited for it across centuries. Mara stood taller, clutching her father's insignia, its cold metal biting into her palm, but she held firm. Korrath turned, claws clacking against the floor, leading her deeper into the ship. The corridors narrowed, walls draped in severed cables and rusted panels that rattled when she brushed them. Darkness thickened, pierced only by faint beams from ceiling cracks, glinting off Korrath's jagged armor. They stopped before another control panel, buried deep within the vessel, an ancient slab of metal coated in stardust and scorch marks. Mara wasn't an engineer, but she was a pilot. She knew how to spark life into a machine, how to raise it from ashes. Her hands skimmed the dust-caked buttons, sensing the faint pulse of energy within, like the heartbeat of a dying soul. She pressed a key, fingers trembling yet decisive. The ship shuddered, the deck quaking beneath her as if roused from a millennia-long slumber. Lights flared, pale blue spreading from the console, bathing her face and Korrath's armor in its glow. Engines roared to life, their rumble echoing through the steel walls, reborn after centuries of silence. Mara grinned a small, razor-sharp smile, her first since being cast into the void. But then a distant blast rocked the air, nearly toppling her. She spun, heart pounding like war drums. Another ship in the graveyard erupted in flame, red fire blooming against the dark, debris scattering to clatter against nearby hulls like a death knell. Korrath hissed, a wary sound, claws digging into the floor, carving deep gouges. They raced outside, Mara's boots slamming against broken metal, each step screeching beneath her. She froze, stunned by the impossible sight. Smaller creatures, like the one from the chamber, poured from the other ships. Dozens, then hundreds, a swarm of metallic insects, gaunt, agile, claws glinting, red eyes burning like blood aflame. They crawled from cracks and breaches, their scraping claws a deafening chorus across the graveyard. Korrath wasn't the only survivor of this void. A parasitic breed had festered here, spawned from the wrecks, small but vicious, and they didn't want this fleet awakened. Mara clenched her fists, nails drawing blood. We have to protect these ships, she said, voice cold as steel. Korrath roared, a sound that shook the void, agreeing without hesitation. They charged into battle. Mara snatched the rod from the floor, gripping it until her knuckles ached, and lunged at the nearest parasite. She stabbed hard, the metal piercing its thin armor, black blood spraying, smoking as it hit the deck. Korrath moved like a tempest, claws ripping through foes, its roar drowning the void's hum. Black ichor coated the floor, slick under Mara's boots, but she didn't falter. She spun, driving the rod into another's throat, blood scalding her hands. But they were legion, surging like a tide, relentless, fearless. Mara's breath came in gasps, sweat stinging her eyes, forcing her to blink through the blur. A parasite leapt from behind, knocking her to the deck. The rod clattered away, wringing out meters from her grasp. Its claws hovered at her throat, sharp and frigid, inches from her skin. She gritted her teeth, hands scrabbling for anything, but too slow. Korrath surged in, tearing the creature off her, hurling it against the wall with a crack. Black blood splashed her face, searing, but she didn't care. She scrambled up, trembling hands reclaiming the rod, her eyes locking with Korrath's. It stood there, breathing hard, green eyes blazing amid the chaos. Then, from afar, a light flared not from the black hole, but from a small object drifting among the graveyard. Mara turned, heart racing. Her father's insignia, its silver faintly gleaming, pulsed with a signal, a beacon in the dark. It wasn't just there, it was guiding her, pointing to a distinct ship among the rusted husks. She scanned the graveyard, spotting a smaller vessel hidden behind the giants, its hull etched with strange symbols unlike anything she'd known. Korrath hissed, sensing it too, head swiveling toward the light. Mara gripped the rod, black blood dripping to the floor. "Let's go," she said, voice low but firm. "We're not done yet." The parasites kept coming, their claws screeching against metal in a relentless cacophony. Mara and Korrath charged toward the small ship, weaving through debris and the corpses of fallen foes. Each step weighed heavy, but the fire in her chest drove her on. The insignia pulsed faster, urging her forward. She didn't know where it led, but she knew one thing: Korrath and she were a unit now, and they wouldn't let the void win. They tore through the swarm, a whirlwind of blood and steel. Mara swung the rod, piercing one parasite after another, black blood splashing, slick beneath her boots. Korrath led the charge, claws shredding enemies, carving a path through the dark. The parasite's shrieks faded, but each step drained Mara, her breaths ragged, fogging white in the chill. They reached the small ship, the insignia's light pulsing like a living heartbeat amid the ruin. Mara paused, hands bracing against its hull, blood and sweat streaking her face. "Now what?" she whispered, voice trembling but unbroken. Mara staggered to her feet, panting, her chest heaving as if she'd sprinted through a blazing battlefield. Black blood coated her, clinging to her shredded suit, scalding her skin like molten oil, smoking in the thin air. Her hands shook not from exhaustion, but from the adrenaline still surging through her veins. Korrath stood beside her, claws dripping black ichor, each drop pattering onto the deck, mingling with the chaos of the graveyard. The parasite swarms still advanced from the rusted hulks, but slower now, as if waiting, their red eyes flickering like spectral flames in the dark. Mara scanned around, breath fogging white. If she didn't rouse the fleet now, they'd be devoured not by the black hole, but by these metallic vermin. She bolted to the console, boots crunching over jagged debris, each step screeching beneath her. The panel glowed faintly blue, dust thick on its keys, but she ignored it. Her hands danced across it, trembling yet precise, pressing buttons with the skill of a pilot who'd flown through hellish dogfights. Korrath loomed before her, a living wall, claws slashing any parasite that dared approach. One leapt, red claws aimed at her throat, but Korrath roared, smashing it to the deck, black blood spraying, sizzling on the cold steel. Engines growled louder, their rumble shaking the walls, the floor quaking beneath her. Light flooded the ship not just from the console, but from its core like a creature stirring after centuries of slumber. Then a thunderous boom echoed not from foes, but from the fleet itself. Mara looked up, eyes wide. Other ships in the graveyard flared to life, one by one, lights blinking like eyes snapping open after an endless sleep. Engines roared, uneven but fierce, a chorus of rebirth drowning the void's hiss and the parasite's scrapes. Mara laughed, a sharp, wild sound, her first true laugh since the void claimed her. "We did it, Korrath!" she shouted, voice raw but alive. Korrath turned, green eyes blazing, rumbling low in agreement, claws tapping the floor. But then a piercing shriek split the air, not engines, but space itself tearing open. A portal of blinding light flared in the distance, brilliant against the graveyard's gloom, and an Alliance ship emerged, small, swift, slicing through the wrecks with lethal precision. Mara's teeth ground together, jaw aching. "Zorn!" she snarled, the name a curse through clenched teeth. Korrath swiveled, green eyes flashing, claws gouging the deck. They weren't ready for this. The fleet was barely alive, the parasites still lurking, but she had no choice. The void didn't grant breathing room. The Alliance ship fired a warning shot, a red energy beam tearing through the dark, slamming into Mara's vessel. The deck bucked, nearly throwing her, hands gripping the console for balance. The blast rang out, debris clattering against the walls. Mara lunged at the controls, fingers flying over keys, hunting for anything resembling a weapon. She didn't know this tech, couldn't read the ancient glyphs, but she was a pilot, she'd make it work. Korrath leapt out through the massive door, claws latching onto drifting wreckage, closing on the enemy. Mara watched it fight, heart pounding, a relentless drum in her chest. It bounded from shard to shard, claws slicing air, hurtling toward the Alliance craft. She slammed a button, fingers unsteady but sure. An ancient cannon fired, its boom shaking the void, a pale blue plasma bolt ripping through the dark, striking the Alliance ship. It erupted in a brilliant fireball, debris scattering to ping off nearby hulks like victory bells. Mara clenched her fists, sweat streaking her brow, her grin unwavering. "One down," she whispered. But the portal shrieked again, and 3 more ships emerged larger, faster, weapons aglow in the gloom. Mara's nails dug into her palms, drawing blood. "We need the whole fleet," she said, voice cold as steel. Korrath returned, bursting through the door, claws dripping red enemy blood, rumbling in agreement, the sound quaking the space. She spun, eyes sweeping the graveyard. Her father's insignia still pulsed from afar, its silver light steady, a lighthouse in the storm. Mara chased its signal, boots slipping on blood-slick floors, weaving past parasite corpses and wreckage. Korrath matched her pace, each step a thunderclap, claws clacking. They reached a small ship, cloaked in shadow among the fleet's giants. It was different, sleeker, etched with strange, flowing symbols mirroring the insignia in her hand. Mara stopped, breath ragged, fingers brushing its hull. The metal was frigid, but a faint energy hummed within, like a heartbeat awaiting her call. She turned to Korrath, eyes hard. "What is this?" she asked, voice low but firm. Korrath tilted its head, green eyes flaring, then tapped the hull with a claw. A soft hiss sounded, and a door slid open, revealing a dimly lit chamber within, bathed in pale blue. Mara stepped closer, clutching the insignia, heart racing. She didn't know what it was, but she felt that this ship wasn't just part of the fleet. It was the key, and her father had led her here. Alliance cannons roared again, closer, stronger, shaking the deck. Mara's fists tightened. "We're out of time," she said, voice sharp. "Make it live." Mara and Korrath sprang into action, no moment wasted. She darted from ship to ship, boots skidding on blood-slick metal, each step shrieking beneath her. Her hands flew over ancient consoles, pressing keys with the precision of a pilot who'd survived countless dogfights. Engines roared, ships across the graveyard igniting, pale blue light spreading like flames of rebirth. Korrath tore through the fray like a storm, claws shredding parasites and Alliance craft alike, its roar overpowering the void's hum. A parasite lunged from the wreckage, red claws slashing for her, but Korrath intercepted, smashing it into a rusted hull, black blood spraying, sizzling on the deck. Explosions echoed through the graveyard, light flaring from Alliance volleys. Mara found a colossal warship, larger than the rest, its hull scarred with black burns yet bristling with intact weaponry, plasma cannons gleaming beneath stardust. She climbed to the command seat, scrambling over severed cables and loose steel, hands trembling but resolute as they skimmed the alien controls. Ancient glyphs pulsed, unlike any Alliance tech, but she didn't care. "Work," she muttered, voice raw, breath fogging white in the chill. She hit a key, the ship shuddering awake, a beast roused from slumber. Engines thundered, and a barrage of plasma fired, blue bolts tearing through the dark, obliterating an Alliance craft. It burst in a radiant fireball, lighting the graveyard, debris clanging like triumph. A voice crackled through the comms, cold and sharp, cutting through the engines and blasts. "Vex? You're alive?" Zorn's rasping tone, mocking yet trembling at the end. "Impossible." Mara's jaw clenched, nails digging into her palms. "You should have checked twice, Zorn," she snarled, words hissing through gritted teeth like a curse. She slammed another key, a second plasma volley ripping free, but Zorn's ship dodged, weaving through debris with deadly grace. He returned fire, a red energy beam piercing her vessel, shredding steel. The deck lurched, throwing her against the chair, pain lancing through her shoulder. Korrath roared, leaping from outside, claws gripping floating wreckage, bounding onto Zorn's ship like a phantom in the void. It tore into the hull, claws slicing metal like paper, a shrill screech ringing as steel gave way. But a glowing energy net erupted from Zorn's craft, ensnaring Korrath, tightening around its massive frame. It thrashed, roaring, but the net dragged it inside, the hatch slamming shut. Mara's scream echoed through the ship, drowning the engines. Korrath! She vaulted from the chair, snatching the blood-drenched rod, no hesitation in her stride. She leapt onto a drifting shard outside, using it as a springboard, her body tumbling through weightlessness. Zorn's ship loomed ahead, larger than the others, its black armor gleaming under explosion-lit shadows. Mara drove the rod into its hull, the tips sinking deep, carving a long gash. She climbed, hands clawing at seams, nails tearing as she hauled herself up the frigid steel. Her breath came in gasps, fogging white, but rage fueled her. She kicked hard, a side hatch bursting open, and she plunged inside, black blood dripping from her hands to patter on the floor. Inside, Zorn stood tall in his black armor, plasma pistol in hand, a triumphant sneer curling his lips. Before him, Korrath lay bound in the energy net, claws flexing uselessly, green eyes blazing through the blue cords. "Nice beast, Vex," Zorn said, voice low and mocking, stepping toward Korrath. "I'll use it to hunt you." Mara charged, rod thrusting into his shoulder, piercing armor, red blood spurting, scalding her hands. He roared, face twisting in pain, but didn't fall. He shoved back, his free hand slamming her to the deck, the rod clattering meters away. Zorn drew his pistol, its barrel glowing, aimed at her head. "You should have died in the void," he growled, finger tightening on the trigger. But Korrath, though bound, lashed out with its spiked tail, piercing Zorn's leg, toppling him. The gun skidded free. Mara scrambled up, trembling hands reclaiming the rod, eyes locked on Zorn. He panted, blood pooling from his shoulder, but smirked. "You can't beat me," he rasped, voice weak yet defiant. Mara gripped the rod, ready to lunge, but a light flared behind her. From the small ship bearing her father's symbols, not far off in the graveyard, a hologram flickered to life, hazy amid the chaos. Her father appeared, aged, silver hair blowing, eyes stern yet gentle. "Mara!" His voice rang out, deep and clear, cutting through the blasts and void's hum. "If you see this, find the power core. It's the key." The hologram wavered, then vanished, leaving Mara frozen, heart pounding. She turned to Zorn, eyes ice cold. "You're wrong," she said, voice low but firm. "I won the moment you threw me in here." Korrath roared, straining against the net, cracking it. Mara lunged, snatching Zorn's pistol from the floor, aiming at him. But a distant blast shook the air, another Alliance ship firing, its beam striking her warship, rocking it. Mara gritted her teeth, pistol steady. She couldn't kill Zorn, yet she needed to escape, save Korrath, find the core her father spoke of. "We're not done!" She snarled, then spun, racing to Korrath, resolute not to leave it behind. She charged, gripping Zorn's pistol, firing at the net binding Korrath. Red plasma tore through the blue cords, sparks raining like dust in the dark. Korrath bellowed, breaking free, claws pinning Zorn to the deck before he could rise, metal clanging sharply. Blood streamed from Zorn's shoulder, pooling red, but he still breathed, gray eyes flickering with helplessness. Mara stood there, panting, pistol trembling in her adrenaline-charged grip. "Stay down," she growled, then turned to Korrath, eyes hard. "Let's go." They bolted from the ship, leaving Zorn amid the wreckage, shattered net coiling around him like a curse. Mara rose, gasping, her chest heaving as if she'd clawed her way out of an endless war. Her hands were slick with blood, black from the parasites, red from Zorn clinging hot and wet to her skin. She knelt beside Korrath, trembling fingers slicing through the energy net with the sharp rod, its edge hissing against the glowing blue cords. The net cracked, then shattered with a soft pop, sparks flaring like fireflies in the dark. Korrath roared, surging forward, claws pinning Zorn to the deck, the clash of metal ringing out as his armor crumpled beneath its weight. Zorn wheezed, blood streaming from his shoulder, gray eyes glinting with hate, but he didn't struggle, he knew he'd lost. Then a new voice cut through the comms, not Zorn's rasp, but a woman's, low and clear, slicing through the engine hum and Korrath's growl. "Lieutenant Vex, stand down." Mara frowned, sweat dripping to patter on the floor. The voice tugged at buried memories from her years in the Alliance, though she couldn't place it instantly. The woman continued, calm but edged. "This is Colonel Eryn, your former commander." Zorn lied. "We didn't erase you." "He acted alone." Mara froze, still gripping the rod, breath ragged. Not betrayed by the Alliance? Just Zorn and a rogue faction, because she knew too much. Dark missions, orders never logged in official records. She turned to Zorn, her gaze icy, sharp as a plasma blade. He lay pinned beneath Korrath's claws, blood trickling from his mouth, pooling red on the deck. "Speak!" she snarled, each word a threat hissed through gritted teeth. Zorn smirked, a weak, defiant laugh bubbling through the blood on his lips, ghastly in its menace. "You think Eryn's clean?" he rasped, voice faltering with pain. "She ordered Alara burned, not me." Mara staggered, as if struck by an unseen fist. Alara, the peaceful colony, its fields, its homes torched not by Zorn, but by Eryn? Korrath rumbled, a deep sound reverberating through the space, sensing the turmoil raging within her. Its green eyes locked on hers, waiting. Mara spun to Zorn's console, fingers flying over the keys, trembling yet precise. She wasn't an engineer or a hacker, but she knew how to break systems. She'd done it to survive missions the Alliance never acknowledged. She slammed the rod into the panel, sparks flying, then drove it deeper, cracking the shielding. The screen flickered, pale blue light washing over her face, highlighting the dried blood on her cheek. She typed fast, hands dancing across the controls, hacking into Zorn's system for proof, anything to confirm his words. The void's hum drowned her ragged breaths, but she didn't stop. Then she found it. Audio logs flashed on screen, Eryn's voice spilling from the speakers, cold and clear. "Burn Alara. Leave no trace. The energy deposits must stay secret." Mara's fists clenched, nails drawing blood. She scrolled through files, plans to raise the colony, maps of hidden energy reserves beneath Alara's surface, encrypted orders to Zorn. He was just a pawn, an executioner, while Eryn pulled the strings, her hands clean but soaked in blood. Mara's teeth ground together, rage blazing in her chest, hot as plasma fire. "Both of them pay," she said, voice low but firm, a vow carved into the void. She bolted from Zorn's ship, leaving him pinned beneath Korrath's claws, blood pooling beneath him. She raced through the graveyard, boots crunching over metal shards, weaving past parasite corpses and rusted hulks. The insignia in her hand pulsed faster, its silver light guiding her to her father's small ship, cloaked in the fleet's shadows. She stopped before it, breath heaving, fingers brushing its hull. The metal was frigid, but a faint energy thrummed within, alive yet subdued. She kicked hard, the door springing open, revealing a small chamber lit by a pale blue glow. Inside, a power core shimmered, not Alliance tech, but something ancient, potent, glinting like a star trapped in glass. Mara stepped forward, trembling hands touching the core. It warmed beneath her fingertips, pulsing as if alive. She turned to Korrath, now at her side, claws clacking on the deck. "What is this?" she asked, voice rough. Korrath tilted its head, green eyes flaring, then tapped the core with a claw. A soft hiss sounded, and the core blazed brighter, light flooding the chamber, bathing her face and Korrath's armor. Mara felt its power, not just enough for one ship, but capable of fueling the entire ancient fleet, turning it into an unstoppable force. She gripped the core, yanking it from its cradle, hands shaking but resolute. It was heavier than she'd expected, but she didn't let go. She turned, gazing out at the graveyard, where Alliance ships still hovered, their cannons aglow in the dark. Eryn's voice crackled through the comms again, icy. "Vex, surrender. You can't win." Mara smirked, a razor-edged grin. "You don't know me, Eryn," she whispered, fingers tightening on the core. She faced Korrath, eyes hard. "We'll make them regret this," she said, voice steady as steel. Korrath roared, a sound that shook the space, and they charged out, clutching the core, the key to awakening the fleet and exacting vengeance. Mara and Korrath abandoned Zorn's ship, leaving him bound in the shattered energy net amid the wreckage, blood pooling crimson beneath his shoulder on the cold steel. She didn't look back, not a flicker of doubt. Her boots pounded drifting debris, screeching with each step as she raced through the graveyard, the power core blazing in her hands, hot as a captive star. Korrath ran beside her, claws clacking, green eyes burning through the dark. They returned to the fleet's mightiest ship, a towering war machine, its hull scarred with burns and rust, yet radiating the grandeur of a galactic conqueror long past. Mara clambered to the command seat, scrambling over broken cables and loose steel, hands trembling but sure as she slotted the core into a recess on the console. It flared, pale blue light seeping into the ship's circuits. A faint hum grew into a thunderous roar, the deck quaking beneath her like a beast awakening. Hundreds of ships across the graveyard ignited, one by one, lights blinking like eyes snapping open after millennia. Weapons primed, plasma cannons gleaming beneath stardust, outclassing anything the Alliance wielded. Mara stood tall, gripping the chair, Korrath at her side, claws dripping Zorn's red blood. "This isn't just about Zorn," she said, voice cold as steel. "It's the whole damn Alliance." Korrath rumbled, a deep quake of agreement, unwavering. She hit a key, fingers skimming ancient glyphs with a pilot's precision. A spatial rift tore open ahead, blinding light ripping through the Kaelar Black Hole's gloom, warping space into twisted spirals. The ancient fleet surged through, each ship roaring, carrying the void's shadow and a dead civilization's might. They emerged near the Alliance command station, a colossal fortress adrift among the stars, its white turrets blazing in the black. Eryn waited there. Mara knew it. She felt the woman's cold, ruthless presence, the one who'd ordered Alara's ashes. Battle erupted instantly. Plasma volleys burst from Mara's fleet, pale blue bolts shredding the dark, smashing Alliance ships into fiery oblivion. Explosions thundered, debris clattering like death knells. Korrath leapt outside, claws gripping floating wreckage, bounding between ships, tearing enemy hulls apart. Its roar echoed through space, overpowering the hiss of energy fire. Mara commanded from the chair, wielding tactics learned from Korrath, swift, precise, merciless. She unleashed a barrage, targeting Alliance weak points engines, weapon bays each hit a killing blow. An Alliance ship erupted, shards flashing past her, but she didn't blink. Then a new shriek pierced the fray, not from the station, but behind. A massive ship emerged from the black hole, larger than Mara's warship, its black hull spiked and etched with alien runes. Not hers, not Alliance, but the ancient enemy of Korrath's fleet, a rival civilization surviving in the void, come to reclaim what she'd awakened. Mara turned, a sharp grin splitting her lips. "Want to fight?" she shouted, voice raw but defiant. "Bring it." She and Korrath dove in, turning the clash into a three-way maelstrom, cannons blazing, roars and blasts merging into a symphony of ruin. Mara piloted the warship, hands dancing over controls, firing relentlessly at both Alliance and the new foe. A bolt from her ship struck the command station, shattering a turret in a burst of debris like a meteor shower. Korrath leapt onto the enemy craft, claws ripping its hull, black blood drifting in zero gravity. But they weren't weak. A red energy beam lanced back, rocking Mara's ship, tilting the deck. She clung to the chair, teeth gritted, firing back. An Alliance ship charged, cannons blazing, but she dodged, letting it crash into the ancient enemy, both erupting in a fiery collision. Amid the chaos, the power core flared on the console. Mara turned, heart racing. A message crackled through the speakers, her father's voice, deep and clear, cutting through time. "Mara, if you hear this, know I was part of this fleet. I was trapped in the black hole to shield it from these enemies, those coming now." The message flickered, then died, leaving Mara breathless. Her father, not just a lost pilot, but a guardian of this ancient force, sacrificing himself to keep it safe. She clenched her fists, nails drawing blood. "Dad," she whispered, voice hoarse. "I won't let them have it." She spun back to the screen, eyes icy. The command station held, Eryn no doubt commanding from within, and the ancient enemy pressed on, cannons aglow. Mara slammed a key, a plasma barrage tearing through an enemy ship, debris scattering. Korrath leapt back aboard, claws dripping black ichor, green eyes locking with hers, expectant. "We don't stop," she said, voice firm as steel. "Not until they all fall." The ancient fleet roared, primed, and they charged into the fray, bearing the Void's might and her father's legacy. The battle ended in smoke and fire, a chaotic spectacle among the stars. Mara stood atop the command station's ruins, boots grinding scorched metal once an impregnable fortress, now ash adrift in zero gravity. Smoke swirled around her, the stench of burnt steel and oil thickened the thin air, but she didn't flinch. Korrath loomed beside her, claws dripping black and red blood, green eyes blazing through the dark, its massive frame a monument of victory amid the wreckage. Behind them, the ancient fleet hovered, hundreds of ships aglow, engines rumbling, weapons still red-hot from the fight. Eryn knelt, bound in energy cords before a rusted hulk, her cold face twisted in defeat. Zorn was dead, his corpse lost in his ship's debris, blood dried on the deck. The enemy from the black hole, the ancient rival seeking the fleet, lay shattered, their ships mere fragments among the stars. But Mara didn't rest. She strode to the station's edge, gazing into the vastness, stars twinkling like silent witnesses. She tapped a wrist control, activating the fleet's comms, her voice ringing out, sharp and clear, broadcasting across the galaxy. "The Alliance lied to you. They burned colonies, slaughtered the innocent, buried truth in blood and fire. I'm proof." Her words echoed through space, reaching distant planets, orbitals, lone ships in the void. She was no longer just a pilot, she was a survivor, commander of a shadow fleet, a flame to burn the Alliance's deceit to cinders, leaving ash for those who trusted it. Space fell silent for a heartbeat, then signals crackled to life. Messages poured in from far-flung colonies, the oppressed, defectors who'd served the Alliance and now turned. "We hear you, Vex," a gruff voice rasped from a mining outpost at the galaxy's edge. "We're with you," a younger one chimed from an abandoned colony. Mara stood firm, clutching the blood-stained rod, breath steady despite the storm within. She turned to Korrath, resting a hand on its frigid armor, feeling the power beneath its seams. "It starts here," she said, voice low but resolute, a vow etched into the void. Korrath tilted its head, rumbling low, green eyes flaring in agreement, ready for what lay ahead. She returned to the largest ship, stepping into the command chamber where the power core still blazed on the console, its blue light highlighting the dried blood on her cheek. She touched it, fingers grazing its scalding surface, sensing the faint pulse within the strength of a lost civilization, now hers to wield. She pressed a key, trembling yet sure, activating its final function. A soft hiss sounded, then a galactic map bloomed on screen, holographic light filling the chamber, tracing the galaxy's intricate web. Red dots pulsed, marking hidden bases of the ancient enemy, those who'd hunted this fleet, still lurking in the shadows, biding their time. Mara stood still, eyes locked on the map, breath slowing. She zoomed on one dot, a base deep in a distant nebula, cloaked in stardust and plasma clouds. "They're not done," she whispered, voice rough. She turned to Korrath, gaze icy. "Neither are we," it roared, the sound shaking the chamber, claws clacking on the deck. Mara smiled a small, dangerous grin, like a blade glinting in the dark. The void hadn't killed her, it had forged her, transforming a betrayed pilot into a living legend, a fire unquenchable. She stepped from the chamber, facing the fleet, its ships aglow in the void. Signals kept coming, growing louder from farmers on forgotten colonies, engineers in mining rigs, pilots from shattered fleets. A small ship approached from afar, unmarked by the Alliance, signaling. "We want to fight." Mara nodded, grip tightening on the rod. She returned to the core, fingers tracing the map, memorizing each coordinate, each enemy stronghold. "We'll find them," she said, voice steady as steel. "And we'll end this." Korrath stepped beside her, its bulk a war shadow among the fleet. She rested a hand on its armor again, their strength entwined with her will. "You and me," she whispered. "We're the beginning." The fleet thundered, engines roaring, primed for the next war. Mara took the command seat, eyes fixed on the galactic map. Stars gleamed ahead, but she saw no beauty, only battles, foes, and a galaxy she'd reshape. They surged forward, the ancient fleet slicing through space, bearing the void's darkness and the light of retribution. Signals from new allies rang through the speakers, voices of the forgotten blending into a chorus of hope and fury. Mara stood, clutching the core, the map blazing before her. She carried more than a fleet, she carried a legend, a tale to echo through centuries, from distant colonies to uncharted stars. The void had tried to break her, and it had failed. Now, the galaxy would know her name,